Welcome to the Physician Wealth Med podcast. It's wealth medicine for doctors. If you're a doctor and you have no time, it looks like you found us just in time. This podcast is for all doctors who would like to work on their personal wealth, but do not have traditional hours to do so because they have no time. We're here to jump into topics that will help you address your wealth both inside and outside of your practice so that you can live the life of significance you're dreaming of. You'll hear from your peers, you'll hear from industry professionals, and your host and wealth advisor, me, Kevin Sullivan. This is your time. Now let's get started with today's podcast. Check out David McKnight's books, The Power of Zero, The Volatility Shield, The Guru Gap, Look Before You Lerp, Tax-Free Income for Life, and a novel called The Infinity Code. Check them out. You won't be disappointed. Now let's get to our podcast. Well, welcome to another show of the Physician Wealth Med podcast. We're really glad that you're joining us here today. We call it Wealth Medicine for Doctors, and we are so privileged today to have David McKnight with us. So, David, welcome. Good to have you with us today, all the way from Puerto Rico.
Yes, Kevin, thank you for having me on.
Yes, David McKnight graduated from Brigham Young University with honors in 1997. Hey, it's one thing just to graduate there, but with honors is another thing. He has been featured in Forbes, USA Today, the New York Times, Fox Business, Bloomberg Radio, MarketWatch, CBS Radio, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, NASDAQ.com, Reuters, Investors Business Daily, Kiplinger's. And when you run out of breath, that's a lot. So he's been all over. He's very well known. David's best-selling book is The Power of Zero, and it has sold over 400,000 copies. And this book recently made itself into a full-length documentary entitled The Power of Zero. The tax train is coming, and we want to talk about that today. With this follow-up book, Tax-Free Income for Life, that was launched in November of 2020, it finished the week at the third most sold business book in the world. With the most recent book that just came out in December 2024, The Guru Gap, that finished number 8 on the USA Today bestseller list and was the top-selling business book in the world. He and his wife, Felice, have 7 children. So you have 7 children. That is awesome. So again, welcome to the show here today, David. I also want to mention that you have 6 books that you have written in total: The Power of Zero, The Volatility Shield, The Guru Gap, Look Before You Lerp, LIRP, Tax-Free Income for Life, and a nice novel called The Infinity Code. And all of these can be found at davidmcknight.com. So check it out. Get yourself a copy of these. I think what David has to say today is going to be very powerful for you to listen to. And doctors, what we try to do is help you build wealth inside and outside of your practice with things that you probably wouldn't find on your own. But we're trying to deliver these concepts, these strategies to help you with the power of zero. And when you think about the power of zero, what does a zero do to your income if you can add it on the other side? Lots of great things. So what does a zero do to your tax bracket? Oh, many things that you probably haven't even considered yet. So let's welcome David McKnight here. And David, tell us about yourself and what you're doing.
Well, I started in the financial services industry in 1997, back when the national debt was $5 trillion. Back in about 2010, I became aware of a guy named David Walker. He was the Comptroller General of the federal government at the time, and he was sort of crisscrossing the country, raising the warning cry like an Old Testament prophet with his hair on fire, warning about the catastrophic trajectory of the national debt. And back then, it was only $10 trillion. But he was sort of accounting for all the unfunded obligations for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid that he was seeing off into the future. He says, look, there's this demographic glitch known as the baby boomers, and they didn't have nearly as many children as their parents did. In fact, they had 30 million fewer children, and that's going to create this sort of this upside down pyramid, this demographic time bomb that's going to go off, because they're not going to, those Gen Xers and their children aren't going to be contributing nearly as much money to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid as those baby boomers you had. So you have this demographic time bomb, and eventually they'll get to the point where there's shortfall in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And that's, it's slated to happen in the next 10 years for both of those programs. And a very famous guy, economist by the name of Larry Kotlikoff out of Boston University. He's a foremost expert in the world in what we call the fiscal gap accounting. And basically what he does is he projects out over 75 years, everything that we promise to pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the national debt, projects out over that same time frame, everything that we can actually afford to deliver under today's tax rates. He says, look, if there's a difference between those two numbers, then your country has a fiscal gap, and that's its true national debt. He says the true national debt for the U.S. right now is not 36 trillion. He says it's much closer to 239 trillion. What does that mean? That means you'd have to have $239 trillion sitting in a bank account today earning treasury rates to be able to deliver on everything that we promise that we can't afford to pay. So I became acquainted with all of these different people. And in 2014, I wrote a book called Power Zero. I self-published it, threw it out on Amazon, crossed my fingers, hope for the best, and people just started to buy it. And here we are, it was later bought by Penguin Random House. It sold over 400,000 copies to my, beyond my wildest expectations. And so that sort of, I think, spawned a bit of a retirement revolution where people are really trying to sort of insulate themselves from the impact of higher taxes down the road. David Walker said that tax rates have to double or we could go broke as a country. And so really what I've been trying to do with my messaging is just raise a warning cry to people that, hey, tax rates have nowhere to go but up. I'm not the only one that believes that. More and more experts are getting on board with that. Very, very few people now are calling this, are suggesting that that's not likely to be a reality in the next 10 to 15 years. In fact, Penn Wharton recently came out with a study that said if we don't right our fiscal ship of state by 2040, that no combination of raising taxes or reducing spending will arrest the financial collapse of our nation. And so this is an issue, Kevin, given that 95% of the cumulative retirement savings accounts across the country are in tax deferred vehicles like 401ks and IRAs. What does that mean? That means that Americans have gotten a deduction on their retirement savings at historically low tax rates, only to postpone the payment of those taxes to a point in the future when experts are saying that tax rates could be twice as high as they are today. And so really, my goal has just been to sort of go out and raise a warning cry to a generation of baby boomers who, there's 78 million of them who have 95% of their money in Roth or in IRAs and 401ks, and to sort of sing the praises of tax-free retirement planning, which you're foregoing a tax deduction. You're foregoing a tax deduction today so that you don't have to get pay a tax somewhere down the road when those tax rates are likely to be higher than they are today. So that's really been my mission. That's been my messaging, and that's probably what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it too, they raise those contributions every year just a little bit so that you can defer more money today for higher taxes tomorrow. Isn't that a good deal when you think about it, right? Especially with that super catch-up provision that just came into play here in 2025. So David, if I remember right, when you illustrate what $1 trillion looks like, I've heard it said, and there's an illustration out there on the web somewhere that says, if you had $100 bills and you put them on pallets, you could fill an entire football field 6 feet high with just 1 trillion. So then when you do the math on that with 36 trillion or over 200 trillion, like you're saying, that would completely dwarf that in massive ways, right?
Yeah, most people can't really conceive of how big a number 1 trillion is, and then 36 trillion. And then you consider that given the federal deficit, we're going to be adding $2 trillion per year on top of that. And that's before Trump extends the tax cuts. They're saying that could add another 5 trillion. So we could be at $60 trillion of debt. And that's not really the debt that we should be worried about. It's the debt to GDP. And like I said, Penn Wharton has said that the minute we hit 200% debt to GDP, we go into a death spiral from which there's no recovering. And so really we're entering the danger zone, and Americans need to get serious about contemplating repositioning their highly taxable retirement savings to tax-free accounts. And we're going to talk about some of those accounts today.
Absolutely. So tell us about that. Tell us about the Power of Zero and what you're doing with the work there. And doctors, this is something that is right up your alley. This is for anyone, but especially high income earners to be able to do this, take advantage of it, and to retire with tax-free income, tax-free wealth is huge.
Yeah, really, the approach calls for taking advantage of really every nook and cranny in the IRS tax code. We believe that there's 6 or so different streams of tax-free income that people should be aware of. And every single one of those streams of tax-free income is unique in some way and can accomplish something that the other streams of tax-free income can't do. For example, I love to talk about the Roth IRA. Maybe not all of your doctors will qualify, but they could maybe do it, a backdoor Roth. But really, a Roth IRA gives you instant liquidity on whatever you've contributed. So if I put in, say, $8,000 this year, I turned 50 a year ago, so I can now do that. So you put 8,000 in, and you want to take that money out a week later, you can totally do it. So it's got liquidity that a lot of these other retirement, tax-free retirement tools don't have. I love Roth 401ks because you get a company match, get an instant return on your investment. None of the other streams of tax-free income can do that. I love Roth conversions because Roth conversions allow you to convert an unlimited amount from your IRA or 401k to tax-free. I often joke that, Mitt Romney is purported to have over $100 million of money in his IRA, which it's a long story as to how it got that big, but he got $100 million in his IRA. And if he wanted to tomorrow, and he probably should, he could convert that entire IRA to a Roth IRA all in 1 year. He'd have to pay the tax, but I think he's good for it. But the point is, you can convert unlimited amounts of money. There's no income limitations. You can just convert it all. So that's going to be a real workhorse in your tax-free retirement strategy. I believe that you should be leaving a little bit of money in your tax-deferred accounts. Why? Because you'll have a standard deduction in retirement. Okay, if you're married and retire today, younger than 65, you're going to have $30,000 of standard deduction. So I believe that you should have a balance that's low enough in your IRA at retirement that your required minimum distributions are equal to or less than your standard deduction. For most married couples, that's going to be about $350,000, but you also want it to be low enough that it doesn't cause Social Security taxation. So that's what I call the holy grail of financial planning, because if you have an IRA that's tax-free, think about it. You got a deduction on the front end, you grew it tax-deferred, and then you took it out tax-free by offsetting that RMD with your standard deduction. And then we have something called, I've written several books about this, the Life Insurance Retirement Plan, which basically what you're doing is it's a life insurance policy where you're getting as little death benefit as the IRS requires of you. You're stuffing as much money into it as the IRS allows in an attempt to mimic a lot of the tax-free benefits of the Roth IRA without the limitations of the Roth IRA. So there's no contribution limits, no income limitations. And this is something that does some really interesting things. It allows you to to grow the money tax-free, take it out tax-free. But there's also a death benefit component that you can receive in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. This is a huge deal. If you're 55 or 60 and you're married, what do you and your spouse have 4 of? You have 4 parents. What's the likelihood that one of those parents is going through a long-term care event even as we speak? It's pretty darn high. And so most people are, as they approach retirement, they're thinking, I know I'm going to need long-term care somewhere down the road, but how do I get long-term care without the heartburn that goes along with traditional long-term care insurance? And this whole idea where you can advance your death benefit prior to your death and spend it on long-term care. And if you die peacefully in your sleep, never having needed long-term care, someone's still getting a death benefit, probably your kids, your grandkids. That's a very, very compelling way to address the long-term care need for a lot of people. So that LIRP, cash value life insurance, can do something that none of these other streams of income can do. It's very unique. And then, of course, if you can keep your provisional income low enough, your provisional income is the income that the IRS tracks to determine if they're going to tax your Social Security. If you can keep your provisional income as a married couple below $32,000, then your Social Security all of a sudden becomes tax-free as well. And tax-free Social Security is great because it shields you from tax rate risk, long-term care risk, cost of inflation risk, longevity risk. So really, when you incorporate all of these different streams of tax-free income, all of the puzzle pieces fit together in just the right way, you can be at or near the 0% tax bracket in retirement. And we make a big deal about this because if you're in the 0% tax bracket in retirement and tax rates double, 2 times 0 is still 0.
That is a big deal. I mean, I know you said that kind of quickly, but that is a big deal, and as you go through and you put these and architect these things together, you can get to that spot, but it's just you got to be in the know as to know how to do it and when to do it. So I love the thought that you talked about with the accelerated death benefits, for long-term care needs. The last thing you want to do when you have a qualifying event is read the fine print to find out where, when, how, and is this eligible and is this not? I mean, just a monthly check comes into the mail and you can spend it however you want. And that might be a show for another time.
Yeah, I mean, real quick. So my stepfather just passed away a couple of months ago, and he had been paying into a long-term care policy for 30 years, $2,500 a year for 30 years. And then when he ended up needing long-term care, he could no longer perform 2 of 6 activities of daily living. She called up the company only to find out that there was an elimination period of something like 90 days. And so he actually died during that elimination period. So he was never actually able to withdraw any benefit at all. And that is the source of heartburn, because what if he had taken that $75,000 over is that what that is? It's 30 times. Yeah. Is that right? 30 times 2,500. Over the course of that 30 years, either invested it, put it into a life insurance retirement plan where upon his death, had he never ended up needing long-term care, my mom would have gotten a death benefit out of that. Right. And so hardly anybody uses traditional long-term care anymore, because this use it or lose it proposition is a huge source of heartburn for a lot of different people. Nobody wants to, pay for something you hope you never have to use. And so I have real life experience from the sort of the dangers of plowing money into traditional long-term care. I think that the LIRP, the life insurance retirement plan approach, is able to cover the risk, assuage the risk, with much less heartburn than the traditional approach.
Oh, absolutely. 1,000%. I've even got the same thing on my own financial security, but it's financial security. It's peace of mind, keeps you in the driver's seat all the way around. And the money's coming back to the kitchen table one way or the other. And that's the power of that. Talk to us about how that works. If we're looking at the power of zero, if we're looking at how the life insurance works and you being able to remove money from that and the tax-free aspects of it, let's dive into that a little bit for the doctors.
Yeah. So one of the things that can be appealing for doctors is, you can only put so much money into, your qualified retirement plans. The money in the LIRP, the growth of the money in the LIRP is governed by a completely different section of the IRS tax code. What does that section of the IRS tax code say? It says you can touch the money pre-59.5 without penalty. You can't do that in your IRA or 401k. They're going to tell you that as your money grows, you receive no 1099s. What does that mean? That means no taxes as your money grows, like you might experience in, say, a brokerage account. They're going to tell you that when you take the money out, if you take it out the right way, it does not show up as reportable income on your tax return. That means it's tax-free and does not count as provisional income, does not count against the threshold which costs Social Security taxation. They're going to tell you that there are no contribution limits. Remember, with the Roth IRA or Roth 401k, Roth 401k this year, you've got you can contribute $23,500 plus another $7,500 catch-up. And there's some higher amounts if you're within, I believe it's 64
or something like that. Yeah,
something like that. You can go a little bit higher. I got clients that put in $50 a month, and I got clients that do $200,000 per year into the LIRP and everywhere in between. There's no income limitations. I often ask the question, can Bill Gates do a Roth IRA? And the answer is, of course, no. Why? He makes too much money. You start making north of $246,000 of modified adjusted gross income, you can no longer do a Roth IRA. And I also joke, can my kids do a Roth IRA? And the answer is always, to do a Roth IRA, you have to have earned income. And I always like to jest, my kids work, I just don't pay them, right? So you got to have earned income to do a Roth IRA. And then the last one that I like to talk about, one of the benefits of the LIRP, is this idea of legislative risk. It doesn't appear to have legislative risk. What does that mean? A lot of people think that means they're not going to change the rules on it somewhere down the road. Well, guess what? They did change the rules on this thing 3 different times, in 82, 84, and 88. But every single time they changed the rules, they simply said whoever has the bucket before the rule changes gets to keep it and continue to put money into it under the old rule for the rest of their lives. You call that a grandfather clause. And so, that a lot of people like all of those different benefits because they can do some things that not all of the other tax-free streams of income can do. Does that mean you put all your money in there? No, it only really works if you utilize it in concert with all the other tax-free streams of income. We talked about it, but it can be part of the puzzle. And one of the things that experts like you do is you help people understand how all of these puzzle pieces fit together in such a way that they can get to the 0% tax bracket and be truly shielded from the impact of higher taxes.
Absolutely. I like how you said it's kind of like a diversification. This in concert with everything else can really make an impact, especially if you focus on it. And nothing good happens by doing something reactively, but everything good happens when you do something proactively. And I'm a firm believer in that. I've seen it too many times to know otherwise. So if you're proactive and intentional about this, you could really shape your financial future using this life insurance retirement plan. One of the things I love about that is the tax-free loans that come out. That's how you do it. You know, you're able to take tax-free loans from the cash value. Speak a little bit to that.
Sure. So basically, what's happening here is when you take that loan, you're not taking a loan from your own cash value, but you're using your cash value as collateral against a loan that the insurance company has given you. And the way it all works out is it ends up being a tax-free and cost-free distribution. So let me sort of explain that. So anytime you take a loan, whether it's from a life insurance company, a mortgage company, your rich Uncle Louie, it doesn't show up as taxable income on your tax return because the IRS assumes you will be paying that loan back with income that has been taxed. So they're going to get you somewhere along the line. And so when an insurance company gives you a loan, in order for it to be an arm's length transaction, they have to charge you a stated rate of interest. Let's call it 3%. So they charge you 3%. And that's the money. Let's say you requested a loan of $100,000. That's what you get in the mail the next day or 5 business days later or what have you. In the meantime, what they've done is they've taken $100,000 out of your cash value and put it in what I call a loan collateral account. Okay. So, and what they do is they credit that loan collateral account a stated rate of interest. Okay. So remember, they're charging you 3% over on your loan, but they've taken money out of your cash value, put it in a loan collateral account where they're charging you a rate of interest. They're crediting you a rate of interest. We'll call that 3%. Now, there's certain carriers out there that will guarantee that what they charge you and what they credit you will always be the same number. So they'll charge you 3, or they'll charge you 3, and then they'll credit 3 right back to you. Yeah. So all you know is that you asked for $100,000, you got $100,000, your cash value went down by $100,000, and there was no net cost for doing so. Because it was a loan, it was tax-free. And because they credited right back to you the cost of the loan, there was no net cost associated with the transaction. So it's a tax-free and a cost-free distribution. So on paper, it feels as if it were a distribution from a Roth IRA because you didn't have to pay any tax along the way. So this is how, you talk about, I think it's, who was the coach out of Michigan? It's either John or Jim Harbaugh. I think it was John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
One of the Harbaugh brothers had one of these programs as part of their compensation package. They were getting something on the order of $1 million per year of tax-free, cost-free loans out of a life insurance policy. And, it was one of the benefits that they gave him to try to get him to stick around. He didn't stick around, but it was one of the inducements that they gave him to stick around because tax-free, cost-free distributions every year of your retirement to the tune of $1 million, it's a pretty nice benefit.
It's music to my ears. Okay, so let's discuss if a doctor's got a 401k plan and they're looking at this as an alternative, what are the differences? Can you just kind of go through those again, just kind of highlight the differences between a 401k and what that does? And then if they had the life insurance retirement plan going side by side.
So what I would do is if I believe that tax rates in the future were likely to be dramatically higher than they are today, if my personal income tax bracket I predicted was going to be higher, I would not do a traditional 401k. I would do a Roth 401k. Right. Roth 401ks do have limits on how much you can put in. If you're younger than 50, you can only put in 23.5. If you're older than 50, you can put in, 31,000 unless you're in that 61 to 64 age bracket. You can put in a little bit more to catch up. Mm-hmm. So there are going to be income contribution limits. You don't really have the income limitations with, the Roth 401k, but if with the traditional Roth IRA and IRA, you have income limitations. The other thing is with the cash value life insurance, it does have a death benefit that doubles as long-term care. You're not going to get that with the Roth 401k. And I got to be very careful with people because the one does not replace the other. They work best when used in concert with each other. I love, for example, using cash value life insurance as what I call a volatility buffer concept. And this is something that a recent Ernst & Young study came out with, where they basically, they compared two different scenarios. They compared somebody who was doing just straight investing, and then they compared someone who did investing and then put 30% of their retirement savings into cash value life insurance. And basically what they found is that if you can save between 3 and 5 years worth of living expenses in your cash value life insurance by day one of retirement, and then in the year following a down year in your stock market portfolio, call it your Roth 401k, what have you, if you can pay for your living expenses out of your cash value life insurance, what that does is it gives your stock market portfolio, your Roth 401k, a chance to recover before you take further distributions. And that act alone will increase the sustainable withdrawal rate on your stock market portfolio from 4 to as high as 8% with a 95% success rate. And so what we're finding is that if by using cash value life insurance as a supplement or as a volatility buffer in retirement, then that allows you to draw an even higher sustainable rate of distribution from your stock market portfolio. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's not how much money you have, it's how much income you can draw off that money in retirement. That's the number that really matters in retirement. So if you can now, because you've got enough money squirreled away in your cash value life insurance that it can serve as an effective volatility buffer, you can now double your rate of withdrawal on your stock market portfolio. And that's massive. I mean, think about it. If you get $1 million in your Roth 401k and you don't have that volatility buffer, you're going to be constrained to taking, about $40,000 per year adjusted every year for inflation. If you can have a volatility buffer, that's going to allow you to draw as much as $80,000 out of that $1 million Roth 401k portfolio. That's massive. That's huge because you've used it as a volatility buffer. So these are just some of the different applications that you can use for these types of financial tools.
Yeah. And the clarity that it brings allows you to focus on all the right things and say no to everything else. When you think about that, it's huge. Sometimes you have to get to the point in your finances and your wealth strategies to say, I need to stop. I just got to figure out, is what I'm doing the right thing for me right now? Do I need to shift gears? What else is out there? So increase your product knowledge, your financial knowledge in these areas can go a long way. I've been doing this for 35 years. And one thing that I've always noticed is that no one really talks about it too much, but the life insurance death benefit can be an excellent source of funds to get you back what you may have lost in the market. It's the great equalizer. So if you found that over time your portfolio's gone down, I mean, it puts money right back into the kitchen table where it belongs for total financial security. So this is a great strategy for you to look at. I would encourage every one of our listeners to contact David McKnight. Go to his website, make an appointment to talk with him, figure out what he's doing and how he can help you, how his team can help you too as well in these areas. What else would you have to say on this, David?
I think that, in the vein of my most recent book, The Guru Gap, I'd like to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times what will happen is when people hear about this cash value life insurance, it could be in the form of a whole life policy or an index universal life policy. I prefer index universal life. What happens is they'll take to the internet and they'll do a Google search on cash value life insurance. And which names do you suppose rise to the top of the search results? I mean, it's the people with the biggest platforms, the largest followings, and the most famous names. Really, we're talking about financial gurus, mainstream media personalities. In my recent book, The Guru Gap, I talk about 5 of those. I talk about Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, Ken Fisher, a guy named Clark Howard, who doesn't have as big a footprint now, but when I graduated from college, he was like the Dave Ramsey of the world. And then a Johnny come lately on the scene by the name of Ramit Sethi. He's sort of the anti-financial advisor guru. He says, don't mess with financial advisors. They can't help you. And so all of these names rise to the top of the search results. And, Dave Ramsey, what does he say? He says that 100% of cash value life insurance sucks 100% of the time. The only people that do it are either easy dupes or they just haven't researched it enough. Susie Orman says, if anybody ever tries to talk to you about it, you're to shut down the conversation and never work with that person again. Clark Howard says it's a steaming hot pile of garbage. The only person that ever tried to sell it to you is a money-grubbing, commission-hungry financial salesman. And then Ramit Sethi, he just dismisses it as a scam. And so the net effect of all of these critiques and vilifications of cash value life insurance is to paint the people that recommend them and do so, by the way, in a very mathematical way, as sort of like that Nigerian prince who just inherited $1 billion and wants to give you half of it. All you need to do is give him $10,000 as seed capital into his bank account, and then he can transfer it all right over to you. I mean, this is how people that are utilizing financial tools that have been corroborated by math and actuarial science since the early 90s. That's how we're oftentimes getting painted by these financial gurus who are forced to, by virtue of what they're trying to accomplish, they take important financial principles and they distill them down into pithy 10-second sound bites in an attempt to try to be something to everyone. I mean, they're trying to appeal to every possible demographic, so they have to paint it in black and white, one size fits all terms. And so it just doesn't do justice to the cause. And so that's why I was so interested in seeing this recent Ernst & Young study where they actually did a completely unbiased look at the mathematical implications of incorporating some of these financial tools into a balanced approach to retirement. And they found that people that incorporated these tools that are often demonized and vilified by financial gurus are experiencing higher levels of income. They have a higher likelihood that their money lasts through life expectancy, and they're passing more money on to the next generation. Those are three things that every retiree wants. They want higher levels of income, higher likelihood their money lasts through life expectancy, and they want to give more money to their kids and their grandkids. And so a lot of times we have to sort of distinguish the truth from rumor or innuendo or fallacy that's circulating out there on the interwebs. And so that's one of the motivations for why I wrote my book, The Guru Gap.
And it's a must read for sure. I personally haven't read it yet. I know it just came out in December. Just found out about it. So I'm going to pick up a copy of it too. I do that for a lot of my podcast guests so I can really know what they're doing, what it's all about. So I think that's huge. If you have any questions on this, always ask someone who's on the other side of receiving the check. That's who they should be on the top 5, right? When you Google search this, because that check can't replace you as a physician, whether you can't work anymore, you passed away, and now your spouse gets the check. That's where it all becomes full circle for you, And so I think the power of it's huge. And even if we use one of Dave Ramsey's line, if you live like no one else, you can live like no one else. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Live like nobody else. Check into these strategies because they can definitely benefit you as you look deeper into your own financial situation. Dave, do you have any offers, or how can they get in touch with you, and what would you like to say at this point?
Yeah, they can learn about me at davidmcknight.com. I've got a YouTube channel. It's called The Power of Zero. I put in three videos a week, talking about the fiscal trajectory of the nation, talking about Power of Zero strategy, and one of the big things that I do is I critique financial gurus, and I analyze what they're putting out there and actually compare it to what the PhDs are saying. And a lot of times what they're saying doesn't align with what the PhDs are saying. And so I do a lot of comparing and contrasting so that people can get to the bottom of what the strategies actually are that can help them wring the most efficiency out of their retirement savings.
Yes, I would encourage every one of you to like and follow David and see what you can do. See what this information can do for you. And we'll make sure we have all the appropriate links here on the podcast too. David, I want to thank you for your time today going through this all the way from Puerto Rico. I'm sure there's no snow there, even though there was in Pensacola. It's just not right to see snow next to a palm tree, but there you go.
I did research it, and apparently it snowed once in Puerto Rico in the 1950s, but that's, It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Well, thank you so much for joining me today as our guest here today. I encourage every one of you listeners to get a hold of some of this information. We'll have the links available. Thank you, David, for your time today. Appreciate it. And this has been another edition of the Physician Wealth Meds podcast. It's wealth medicine for doctors.
David McKnight is not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Physician Wealth Meds. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. That's our podcast for today. And remember, if you're not working on your personal wealth, who is? Please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Any questions about what you heard today, please send an email to kdsullivan@lpl.com. Physician Wealth Meds, wealth medicine for doctors.